Hi there, Stone here with Wood and Stone. Welcome to Weekend Workshop Warrior. My wife wanted me to make something for our drop desk that can hold keys and such as we come in to the house. And at the same time, I got this new RIKON Z4 chuck that I want to play around with. So we're going to go ahead and turn a nice shallow plate, shallow bowl plate to put on that drop desk. I had a piece of walnut. This is what's referred to as a turning blank. I made this one. It's just 8/4 walnut that I cut 10 by 10, but you can buy them. Woodcraft usually has stuff that's like 6 by 6 by 3 inches deep, or you can get them a bunch of different sizes, 4 by 4. But the basic idea is you're gonna end up with something square that has some depth to it. So we're gonna start out with, I want to show you how I do layout, and as with everything, there's a bunch of different ways to do these things. Today we're going to do kind of a simple way to make this happen with as few tools as possible, and then also I'm going to be using carbide turning tools. You can make it as complicated as you want from there. This is just kind of a beginner video and to do like a shallow bowl or plate. A deep bowl would just be a deeper piece of material, and again, this is only one way to do it. So typically what I'll do is I'll start out by marking corner to corner on my piece. So I just have a combo square here. And all I'm doing is roughly finding center so we can get a circle that's close. Once we get this on the lathe, you're going to actually turn it to the center point that you've decided on the lathe. We're just trying to get it close so that we're not trying to take off big corners along the way to make it easier to machine to start with. So then I take a compass and I'm going to set that up. So it's roughly on the edge here off of the center point, and tighten down our pencil, spin that around. And this is just a rough layout because we're going to get it kind of close, and then we'll make it perfect once it gets to the lathe. Well, perfect's kind of tough to do as a human, but we'll make it close. So now I have a circle. I'm going to go over to the bandsaw and take off this excess material. That way we don't have to turn it off on the lathe. Okay, now we're back off of the bandsaw. One of the things I wanted to point out is, notice that I have my perfect circle here, and it's not cut perfectly around the outside. That's totally okay because we're going to turn it true to wherever I locate center at on here. We're just trying to get it close so I don't have to take off huge corners, and it's going to take a long time. On smaller things on the lathe, when you're doing like little handles and stuff, it's totally fine to take those corners off, but on the bigger stuff, I prefer to cut them off with a saw before I get to the lathe. So I just wanted to show you that. It's totally fine. You can see it's kind of sloppy. I'm not trying to make it perfect because I know when I get to the lathe, it's going to end up being perfect to wherever I locate this thing. This is a face plate. We're going to locate this roughly on center because I already have my cross section that we laid out earlier when we had corners, so it's really easy to lay that out. Roughly 3 inches that way, 3 1/4, 3 1/4-ish, 3 1/4-ish, 3 1/4-ish. So that's roughly center of our blank here. And then I'm just going to sink some screws in. It's really important. These are 1-inch screws, but it's really important that you do the math and make sure that as we turn the other side, you're not going to end up hitting these screws. And then the next big thing is these, once I pull all this out, there's going to be some screw holes, but that's going to be the top side of our bowl. This will end up being the top side of our bowl, so when I hollow it out, those screw holes will go away. So there's step one. And then what we're going to do with that is we're going to put this on my lathe. We're going to turn this true, and we're going to turn the bottom to the shape that I want, like a little bit of a concave radius on the outside here, and also make a foot for the jaws of this truck to fit into. There's all kinds of jaws, especially for this one. RIKON made a whole bunch. You can see them here. and we'll put a link to their website of all the jaws that you can switch out on this new chuck that they have here, the Z4. And then we'll show you how to set that up after I get the foot on here, and we'll get it all turned around and hopefully make this really easy for you guys to bang these out in a weekend. Okay, we're going to go over to the lathe now. So we have our blank with our faceplate, and I'm going to attach it to my threaded onto my lathe here. Most of your lathes are going to have a stop behind the head so that it doesn't spin, so you can actually lock those in. And I'm going to have this turning towards me so that I actually lock the threads in a little bit more. I'm going to bring my tool rest over. And we're only going to be working on this half because as this comes around, we're working from center and over. So I'm really only concerned about that. I want to keep my handles and stuff out of the way. Lock everything in place. I'd like this to be pretty parallel to what I'm going to end up actually turning. Just makes it easier for me to turn something that has a flat face on it, which in this case is going to end up being a bottom. Then once I'm all set up, I always turn to make sure I'm free of everything, just in case something's out of square, out of whack, I'm not hitting anything. So we'll go ahead and start this up. So get her going here. I think we're going to run it like 650, 700-ish. 600-ish. Seems about right. We're not getting any wobble in it. And then we'll go ahead and take a rougher and true up this face. You can see it's not quite flat here, so we'll make this whole face flat, and then I can make a foot that will sit flat on a table. So we start out holding our tool here. You can see where center's at. So we've got a little bit more room there, but I'm not worried about that because we're going to do a concave radius to this afterwards. So now I have a nice flat. I'm going to take that little nubbin off, and I'm going to start to make a foot that we can attach the chuck to in a minute. And that'd be quite deep enough, but I want to shape the rest of the outside of my piece and start to get that concave, the overall shape of my piece in place, and then we can come back and finish this up. But that's the basic idea for a foot, so I'm going to reset out here so I can true up the outside. And again, I want to turn this around so you see how I was clear, but then this spot is almost hitting, so we're definitely not a perfect circle yet, so we want to spin that around after we get it set up to make sure that that is not going to be a problem. Another thing that's really important here is if you look at the side of this, there's nothing that indicates you can't stick this all the way over the rest. On some of your tools, you will see that that's a problem because the steel's not strong enough to handle that pressure, so just make sure you check for that line to make sure you're not too far over. It's one of the things that I like about Carter is I don't have to worry about being too far over my rest. It can only go so far and it's still fine. So anyway, I'm going to turn this on and true up the outside. There, now we have a nice cylinder. I'll slow this down so you can see. It doesn't look like it's wobbling anymore, and that's because there's nothing, see there's nothing that's out of whack there. There's a little bit of discoloration there, but everything's true. Now we'll go ahead and start shaping the outside. I'm going to put this over here so we can start to create something that looks more like a bowl. And for that, I'm going to use my finisher. Bring this back up. Well, we got the outside of a bowl. We'll go ahead and make a little bit more of a foot here. Then I like to take my chuck. Before I turn this off, I'm going to check and make sure that my chuck can actually grab what I have here. So it's a little bit big. I'm going to set this all up again. And we're going to make that radius a little bit smaller. There we go. Make sure I have a good solid grip on there. And I try to move it just to make sure that when I turn this around and we start to actually turn the inside of this out, it's still going to be able to hold. So that fits. Really like how that grabbed. We're going to go ahead and take this off, detach it from the other side, and get this all set back up for our next step. This is the new RIKON Z4 chuck. That's what I'm going to use to hold this thing in. And just the jaws that come with it. Nothing fancy outside of the original package here. I'll open this up. And then these T-handles also come with it. There's also a smaller one that comes with it to take these out. You take these two screws out, and then there's a whole bunch of different jaws that I'll put a link to. I got a ton of different stuff. It's a really great chuck. So far from what I've used it for, I'm really happy with it. But today what we're going to use it for is to grab the bottom of this bowl, the foot that I created, so I can then turn the inside out. I took the faceplate off, just pulled those screws from earlier. I'm going to tighten this down. Make sure that we're nice and snug. That's not moving anywhere. And you can see the holes where those screws were at. Now we're going to make the inside of the bowl. I'm going to bring my lathe, my tool rest on my lathe, back over. And again, remember, we're only worried about this half because as it comes around, that's what's doing the cutting. So we could do something along these lines because we're never going to have the tool over here. And this is a spot, when you start to do deeper stuff, you really want to check the side of your tool, depending on what tool you're using. That steel might not be strong enough to be pushing all the way down inside the bowl. So look on the side. There should be a line that indicates that it can't go deep in the bowl. But that is why I like to use Carter, because I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to pay attention to that line. I can go, you see there's no line on the side here. I can go all the way up to here and not have a problem. And I have had it quite a ways up here and not had an issue. It's a base I'm turning currently. Not had an issue with it. So again, make sure everything's super clear. And then we'll go ahead and clean out the inside. We'll put just a little detail line around the top edge. Just as a nice to have, and to show you guys how to do it, just to use the detailer. We'll go ahead and pop this all out. We'll go back over to the bench and I'll finish out the video. Okay, now we're back at the bench, and I grabbed a couple of things because I want to show you a little bit more explanation of why I did what I did and where you can take it. So that foot, the reason that I inlaid that foot so that the chuck can grab it, but also when you set this down on the bench, you don't see the bottom of it. Another thing that you can do there is you can actually make it so that this foot is proud, and you just mill all this down. And then you can take it to a bandsaw, or you could use a pull saw to cut that off and then sand it. You'd accomplish the same thing. It's just this way, there's a little bit less work. Again, I'm just trying to show you a very simple way to get started with simple tools. There's much more complicated stuff. You can do a lot more interesting things, but you got to kind of walk before you run and crawl before you walk. So this is crawling before we walk. This is just a quick weekend warrior project. This is going on a drop desk, which is a desk that when you walk in the house, you drop your things at it, your keys, your wallet, those kinds of things. So this is going to be filled with keys and stuff. But at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand this, and then I'm going to finish it with Odie's, just the original Odie's. I use that on a ton of different things. But you could finish it all different kinds of way. This is just an easy way. This is definitely like a half a day worth of work on the outside, including the trip to Woodcraft if you're within an hour. This is probably an hour to machine if you're not super skilled. Sand and finish is another hour, but much less as you get more skilled. And then you can grow into things like this. This is a Claro walnut vase that I'm making. I'm going to get a glass insert made for the inside, and then we'll finish the outside. But this is all done on a lathe, but it takes time to get to this level. I just wanted to show you kind of what you can do. And notice that I did the same foot so that when you set it down, you don't see on the outside. But you can do a lot of fun stuff with this, and this is why they say when you get into turning, usually what you hear is welcome to the addiction. That's why, because it takes 15 to 30 minutes to learn how to make one thing that's really pretty, and then you're off to the races. So anyway, thanks for checking this video out. I hope you check out some more of the Weekend Warrior videos, and it helps get you inspired to be in the shop and see all the cool stuff that you can make. Please like and subscribe, and have a good weekend.